Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. As much as I live, eat, breathe fraud, to be completely honest, it's a bit more academic for me, or it always has been, a bit more cerebral. It's a problem that I want to help solve. And it's a fun problem to solve, because in my career, what I've learned is that the criminals are nothing if not creative. They exploit people whenever and however they can. And so being with FICO and being on the cutting edge of machine learning, I get to counter that creativity with innovation. I get to outsmart the bad guys. And as Darcy said, and that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun outsmarting them. But let me tell you a little secret. It wasn't until more recently that this whole professional world of mine ended up colliding with my personal world. Fraud was a career for me. I would think of it as a game of cat and mouse, but I always thought, hey, I'm the cat in this scenario. And then I had an aha moment that I think many of you in this room will share with me. So what was that moment? I became a parent. They're cute and giant up on the screen. So some of you may remember me, but two FICO Worlds, as a seemingly 9.5 months pregnant lady. I was in Miami and DC, pregnant at both of them. This is the result. This is Penny. She's 3 years old. This is Felix. He's 1 year old. Who else in the room is a parent? Can you raise your hands? Great. Keep them raised, please. Keep them raised. Who's an aunt or an uncle? Fantastic. Keep them raised, because I have one more question for you. Who else in the room was ever a child? Oh my God, we have some robots over here who didn't raise their hand, I think. No, we do have consensus. But I think like most parents in this room, I had zero idea, how much worry these two were going to cause me, not just in terms of bumps and bruises, wondering if I was ever going to sleep a full night again. I have not done that yet, but I swear I'm getting close. I worry about supporting their intellectual development, fostering their independence. But I also discovered that my work life took on a whole new element: complete personal paranoia about fraud. You see, the downside of working in fraud is that I know too much. And I'm sure that we're all aware of several of the larger data breaches that have happened over the years. I would contend there's probably quite a few more that you're not aware of or I'm not aware of. And if you look at the screen, you can see a graphic of some of the ones we know about that have happened in the past 2 years. And I'm going to emphasize the word no, because not all of them have been discovered yet. There's Facebook, Marriott and Starwood hotels, Twitter, Facebook again. And with the onslaught of these data breaches, identity fraud has risen dramatically. Personally identifying information has become a commodity. But the sad thing is, and the surprising thing is, it's children that are disproportionately affected by these breaches, not just in the US, but across the world. In 2017, more than 1 million American children were victims of identity fraud. That had an economic impact of more than $2.5 billion. And let me tell you something about that 1 million children. 2/3 of them were under the age of 8 years old. When we look at the UK, the number of identity fraud victims, 21 and under, rose 26% year on year. A recent Javelin study confirmed that, in fact, data breaches are much more of a risk for minors than they are for adults. So of the individuals who were notified that their data was part of a breach, 39% of the children who were notified became fraud victims, as opposed to 19% of the adults. So no longer can you or I trust that our social security numbers, our mother's maiden name, our passwords, the make and model of our first car, that this is information that only we know, because these are static and they're mostly unchanging elements of data that have been compromised over and over and over again. But the fact of the matter is, we can't even blame the data breaches for the lost control of our data. I use Facebook. I use Instagram. I have a YouTube channel that I'm going to ask that nobody look up after this, OK? Please don't look it up. And you'll never find my Reddit handle, because my husband doesn't even know that one. But my point is that social media has become a platform for us to provide the world with our personal information. We're absolutely complicit in this. And again, this is far from an American-centric view. Does anyone in the room have any sense of how many social media users there are in Asia? It is 2 billion and counting. And all of us have something in common. We love, love, love to share pictures of our kids and how adorable they are. We post pictures of their chocolate-covered faces from their birthday parties, and there's mine. You're going to be really sick of my kid pics by the end of this. I'm just warning you now. There's a term for what I'm doing right here in this room and for what I've done here on Instagram. I swear I did not make something this bad up, nor difficult to pronounce up, but it is called sharing-teen. My name is Liz, and I am a sharenter, shameless sharenter. It's natural. I'm a parent, and I'm very proud of my children. But at the same time that I'm bragging, or we're bragging because there are other sharenters out here in the room, we are enabling location services, so at this point, everyone can know our kids' name, how old they are, and where they live. This makes our children vulnerable. In fact, this September article in The New Yorker that's shown on the screen reported by the year 2030, 2/3 of identity fraud cases affecting today's children will have resulted from sharing-teen. Another recent study showed that if you have a social media account, you face a 46% higher risk of identity fraud than if you don't. And again, a global issue. Barclays Bank recently forecasted that sharing-teen is going to cost the world £667 million per annum. Italy had over 27,000 cases of credit card fraud carried out thanks to identity theft in 2018. And there was an average loss of 5,000 euros per case. There are similar stories that you can find for every other country across the globe. Social media is a hunting ground for identity thieves. And what this means is that the perils of sharing-teen, they're very, very real, and they are very, very global. With identity fraud across the world, and even more so now with instant and real-time payments, we're seeing accounts taken over, we are seeing money drained. In the US, the most common form of identity fraud against children is new account fraud, or what we call application fraud. So this is where a criminal uses the child's personal information, and they open a credit card or a bank account. And when we think about the people whose identities are stolen, they're very, very real people. And these frauds are hugely impactful to their lives because they're trying to get back lost funds, prove they are who they say they are, and regain normalcy in their day-to-day. Hands down, though, it's the children who are most targeted for identity fraud. So why is that? Why are children... I'm really shameless here with my photos. So back to my question, why children? The answer is simple. With children, it takes longer for the target to find out that they are a victim. So core identity elements, such as social security numbers, they're really valuable. They're highly valuable because they're a tabula rasa for criminals. And other organizations are not going to find sources of conflicting identity information that is going to be part of their fraud controls that raises red flags. So how are identity elements, such as social security numbers, used against children? I want to walk you through one real-world example. Some of you in the room may be familiar with the concept of synthetic identity fraud. For those of you who aren't, synthetic identity fraud is when criminals use a combination of real information, such as a child's social security number and their address, and they pair it with fake information or fabricated information, such as a name, a date of birth, an email address. And they do this to create a completely new person that doesn't exist anywhere but on paper. This is a problem that happens in the US. It's quite a big problem in the US, happens in several other countries. And so while most other countries don't experience this exact issue, identity fraud certainly manifests itself in other ways. But with synthetic identity fraud, the seeding of this fake data into the world of big data isn't nearly as hard as it seems. I'm going to walk you through 3 of the most common methods, and you can take notes so you can learn how to commit some fraud here. Right? The first is that you might seed the false identity through the process of what we call application flooding. So this is where you're intentionally applying for products, knowing that you're going to be rejected. But then this fabricated data starts to seep into the credit bureau data as part of the declines. So it starts to look like there's actually a person there that exists. They just have a really limited credit history. Another method you might try is taking advantage of authorized users on your credit card account, doing what we call authorized user piggybacking. So what happens here is that true identities and legitimate accounts add on authorized users. So for example, I might one day add Penny onto my credit card, but at the end of the day, she's got her own plastic, but I'm guaranteeing the payment, God help me. Fraudsters do this too. But instead of adding on their children, they're adding on fake people, and they're recycling fake people on and off. And the data, again, starts to seep its way into the credit bureau data because authorized users don't typically go through the same level of application vetting by a bank. The last method that I'm going to go over today, the easiest method, is called credit repair numbers, or credit profile numbers, CPNs. So a CPN is a 9-digit ID number. It looks like a social security number, and it's often promoted as a brand new social security number. You can buy these from the surface web. I could go on Craigslist with you after this session. We could buy one for between $150 and $500 on Instagram, Craigslist. Depends on how much credit history you want on there, the price. People with no credit or poor credit use them to start over. Fraudsters use them to create synthetic identities. It's fraud as a service, FAAS, new acronym, right? Fraudsters are creating these synthetic identities, and they're associating not real people with numbers that shouldn't be used in the first place. It is so dangerous to have armies of people out there who don't exist. And who could ever have imagined that this would be a problem that we're facing today? I think it speaks once again to the creativity that fraudsters have and their ability to exploit whatever it is that they can exploit. And so even though the synthetics, they're not people who actually exist, there are still very real impacts to the very real individuals whose data is stolen and then used in these different schemes. And I think it's important to consider the practical repercussions of what these frauds are, and what does it actually mean for people. So I had the opportunity the other day to dive into some of these repercussions, these impacts, with one of my very own colleagues. This is Ellen. Ellen is the mother of 3 teenage boys. She's an absolutely fantastic professional to work with. You will all know her as the magician behind the Solution Center and the Solution Demo Theater. When Ellen's oldest son, Jack, turned 16, he decided to get a job, which was music to his mother's ears, so she put him in the car and she said, let's go to the bank. We're going to open an account for you to deposit your paycheck into. And all seemed well at the time. They got the account open. But a few days later, Ellen got a piece of mail. And she opened it up, and it was from the bank, and it said, actually, we can't open that bank account for you. There's something wrong with your Social Security number. And so after calling the bank, Ellen learned that she needed to go to the Social Security Administration office. So she took a day off work, and she went. And that's when she learned that someone else had been using Jack's Social Security number. The Social Security office advised Ellen to run a credit report on Jack. And so when she got home, she did this immediately. And she was actually really lucky because there were no outstanding debts in Jack's name or associated with his Social Security number. The person who had stolen it was just using it to live, to rent an apartment, to get access to utilities. And so even though it could have been so much worse for Ellen, it still took her over 2.5 months to resolve the issue. And that included taking another day off work to visit the Social Security office again. And so at the end of the day, what Ellen ended up doing was running credit reports for her other 2 boys and then freezing all of their credit. It's a really frustrating story because we're talking about days off work, months of uncertainty, and I would argue a lifetime of some paranoia. So how about you guys? What are some of the things you can do as a parent, as a consumer, to protect yourself or your family? One thing I would recommend is that you monitor your credit reports. I do this monthly, looking for anything unexpected. I do it whenever I pay my credit card bills. But do it for your kids. Set a calendar reminder and check their credit reports at least once a year. Remember that nothing to report is probably a good thing because depending on their age, they shouldn't have a credit account. You could also consider freezing their credit. And in fact, shortly after my conversation with Ellen, my partner and I decided to do this for Penny and Felix. We took an hour, it did take an hour, and we printed out the forms that were required, filled them out. We went to the safe, took out their birth certificates, social security numbers, social security cards, rather, their passports. We photocopied our own driver's license. We licked 3 envelopes and sent it off in the mail. It was manual. It was a little bit painful, but I think it's well worth the effort to protect my children. So what does freezing credit actually do? Freezing credit means that prospective creditors won't be able to access a credit report, which means they're probably not going to offer you credit, which means if someone else is trying to get credit in your name, they're going to be declined as well. So on the screen are the URLs, at least for the US, in case you want to monitor your FICO score through the My FICO program, or if you want to freeze your credit report with the major bureaus. But the reality is maybe freezing credit isn't an option for you. Maybe your child is about to get their first job, just like Ellen's son was. Or maybe you need to finance a new vehicle in the near future. What are some of the other things that you can consider doing? Well, put your thinking caps on, because you're going to need to be as creative as the fraudsters are. Check your social media privacy settings. I have shamelessly sharented during the session. I use Instagram as a photo album for my kids, but I can guarantee you that I have my account, I have the accounts that I have in their name locked down and viewable by only people I know and that I trust. You should be keeping your eye out for mail that's coming in your child's name. They shouldn't be getting offers for vehicle financing because that's probably a really bad sign. So be vigilant. If you're in the US, I would actually recommend signing up for the US Postal Service's Informed Delivery program. It's a free service. They send you pictures in a daily digest email of all the mail that's coming to your mailbox that day. It helps you prevent credit card fraud. It helps you prevent mail theft. These are all things we can do as consumers to stay vigilant, to protect ourselves, to have a healthy dose of reasonable paranoia. But we're here at FICO World, and we are all in organizations and businesses that protect our customers as well. So what can we do to further protect our customers? We have an amazing event lined up for you. And the next session, we're going to talk about some of the innovations that we have in the fraud space. There are a number of breakouts as well, where you can walk away with a better understanding of how you can use behavioral authentication to prevent account takeover, how you can find mass card compromises faster using the power of consortium data and the Falcon Intelligence Network, how you can empower your data scientists to use AI at scale with FICO Instant ML. Today, I went deep on identity fraud and on synthetics, but FICO has a depth of expertise across all of fraud and financial crime. And we're here to share our knowledge with you. We're here to share our analytic thought leadership with you. But right now, this morning, this is about protecting you. So what I'm hoping is in this moment, we've taken the time with almost 2,000 people in this room to protect ourselves and our families from fraud. Thank you.